The broadcast is now starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
I drug my feet just as long as I could, just so you get it. And I haven't heard from Johnny King, right? Okay. All right. Have you heard anything from him? All right, well, we got a quorum, so we can go ahead and start a workshop. So what I'm going to do is the special workshop of the Destin City Council, June 14, 2021. I'm going to call it to order. First, we don't have a pastor here, so we'll just start with the pledge. Mr. Hebert. Sorry about that. Thank you, ma'am. Under our agenda, item A, strategic planning and fiscal year 2022 operations budget. Lance, take it away.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor and members of council. Let me see if I can make this PowerPoint work. All right, so we've got our 2022 budget workshop number 1. We've got 2 more possible, and then the 2 budget hearings in September. I don't know if you can read this, but we had our visioning session back in January. Tonight we have the June 14th operational budget workshop. Then we move to the capital budget workshop on July the 12th. And from there, we go to individual sessions with council, discussing the capital budget with y'all individually. That's in the August 4 and 5 timeframe. Then we've got the optional budget workshop that council can call. That was implemented a couple of years back, that if we needed a third one, we could do a third one. And then in September is when we do the 2 budget hearings that actually adopt the budget. Then we start the year on October the 1. So I'll just move on through. Back in January, council participated in the visioning session, and coming out of that visioning session was a list of projects, improvements, and initiatives that will follow. I'm going to skip ahead real quick because when I went through this on a practice round, it seemed like we needed to make sense if I told you this first. On that list, there's basically 3 ways we do classify them. We've got capital projects on that list. We've got improvements by the way, the capital projects won't be discussed tonight. That'll be reserved for its own workshop on July the 12th. So we didn't forget about them, but they'll come up on July the 12th. We needed to get through this, make sure that we knew your strategic plan first before we presented a final draft capital projects plan. Then we've got a lot of improvements were on the list, and generally those are management or administrative processes related to the operation of the city. Then we've got some initiatives on there. One of the biggest initiatives that we started a couple of years back was the acquisition of beach property. It started as an initiative, now it's a full-blown project. We also have some that may be parked or shelved, and that means they're just waiting for future resources to become available. One of the ones that comes to mind that was on the list was, I think, Johnny had asked for a parking area and fish cleaning stations and restrooms to be added to some of our facilities. And we parked that one because we know that in the near future, Joe's Bayou Recreation Area will be renovated, and we wanted to suggest that that be put into that design. So it's currently parked, not funded. All right. Just so you all know, I did hand out strictly a draft version of this, which will end up being, you'll have a final version that will look a lot like this. Those that have been here before have seen these before. But this one is strictly a draft. Myself and some staff worked on it, filling in the blanks, just strictly to expedite the process so that we didn't start with the blank piece of paper and so that we don't have to be here till 1 o'clock this morning. I don't take offense if you want to change any of the orders or if you want to add, subtract, whatever you want to do. I just wanted to give you a starting point that was better than a blank sheet of paper. On the lower left-hand corner is the council objectives box. One thing I did change this year was changed how we structured and organized those. I changed it to 3 different kinds of priorities. This is what the field is saying that we could do as a benchmark. To determine the 3 kinds of priorities, we have critical priorities, which must be successfully accomplished within a specific time frame, no matter what. So those, you would only have 1, 2, or 3 probably per year. And the thing about critical ones is they will steal money from the other 2 in order to get done. So they're very, very important to the organization, so we would limit those to very, very important things. On here, the only one I put under critical was offering livable wages and benefits to attract and maintain high caliber qualified staff. That was the number 2 priority out of the workshop in January. After that is important. These are priorities that have fixed resources with varying time requirements. So we can be flexible on when we accomplish it, but we know we need to get it accomplished. And then finally, we've got desirable. These are the niceties, the things that we would like to have, but don't necessarily have to move forward. And this is where we would primarily take resources from in order to finish the critical items if the critical items ran out of resources. So that helps staff organize and stay focused on the major goals that y'all want us to do in a year. So I'll back up to the list. And this is what we actually came up with out of the visioning session. Each of these is shown somewhere on here. I did take the liberty of moving some of them around from last year, those of you who were here and those of you who weren't. I moved many of them under management objectives and under management in progress that used to be under council objectives, because it's just something that staff needs to handle, and you guys have made it clear that you wanted us to handle it, so I moved it out of the council objectives and into just operating, the day-to-day operating of the staff. So number 1 was on the list was Compass, the Compass Intergov implementation, and that thing is going to be deployed this month sometime, and then we'll go into a maintenance period where we're just watching it to see what we need to tweak, what we need to fix. It's going to it's an ongoing process where we're continuously trying to improve this system, but it's supposed to go live by the end of this month. So this will probably be off the list before we hit our new fiscal year, other than the maintenance side of it. Big one on the list in January was staffing needs. I mentioned that earlier. We need to get to a point where we can offer more competitive wages, where people are wanting to get their job and retire here. That's the kind of people we want to try to attract, according to what I heard in January. And I think we can get there. And actually, when Crystal comes up later for part 2, she has an idea where we may be able to implement this before October 1 and get this taken care of, and we can have another priority 1 put on the list for October 1. So she's worked the numbers and she's worked her magic, and I'll let her explain that. We also had the city marina come up. First step would be a feasibility study. We're looking at probably $150,000 that we need to consider if we want to move that forward. Crystal has some of that. Yeah, thank you. Crystal has some of that budgeted potentially in the capital plan. So we'll look at that along with the convention center. Also need a feasibility study, $150,000 approximately for that feasibility study to take place. Probably on the 5-year plan if you all want it to move forward. These are all up to you. Other things on the list were city annexation, the livery vessel regulations and permitting, which used to be an objective under you guys. It's a move now to the management objectives on the back side of your sheet. So nothing disappeared, it's just in different places. There's the one that I spoke of earlier with the parking lot drop-off And transit trolley has got some traction that we need to look at. It's on the desirable list on your objectives. You can leave it there, you can move it up, you can take it off, but I just wanted to put it somewhere, get you all started. Next page, building permits, that was another one that we moved into the management objectives. It's just something that we need to do and keep getting better at as we move forward. Improved parking, that one is ongoing, and we are looking to set up a new account for the parking fees, correct? So they're designated and reserved for special use in parking, but that is also in a management in progress section now on your sheet. The beach renourishment, huge, important priority council objective that we need to co-op with the county, the TDC, and other agencies to help us do that, and we're working on that currently. Of course, the high school is assists in private effort. That's ongoing. We're going to keep doing that as the items come up. Holiday decorations was brought up. That's a management objective now. Implement a roadway striping program. That's a management objective now. And if I'm going too fast, just holler at me. Improve the West End US Highway 98. That's underway. We got the Stallman study done. There's some other funding coming up through the county for more work at Stallman, so those are underway. Revenue sources, Ms. Strickland has some ideas for ways that we can generate some additional revenues going forward. And finally, we've got the wayfinding program, which we put under management in progress. And we also added two other items that are on the next page underneath that as subheadings, and that would be beautifying the gateways and possibly moving our billboard, the world-famous billboard, from the west side of the bridge, maybe to the east side of the bridge, somewhere where people could stop and get that picture that they want of that billboard. I don't know where that would be, but that's something we can consider. Final page on the list, we used the sticker system. These did not have stickers placed on them, but we didn't take them off the list. These are them. I won't go through all of them, but honestly, most of these are management objectives, and they stayed on the strategic plan somewhere. We did not remove them because they didn't have any stickers with them. Any questions on the power list? I know it's a lot of items. We went through classifying the priority items, so is any questions on that? Good. And we went through the three kinds of priorities. Are you guys okay with that change? Because we just did them 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 all the way until we ran out last time, and that's how we prioritized them. And that doesn't work as well as we thought it would. So in your hand now, you do have a draft strategic plan. Staff has worked on this. Did I do that?
The bottom button. Put it back in.
Thank you. Yeah, I asked him what that bottom button was for. He said, don't push it. Okay, now I know why. It turns it off. Learn something every day. I can't read the screen. I apologize. We did get this updated, and like I said earlier, this was just to expedite the process for you guys. I don't have any writers' concerns about if you want to change any of it. It's your document. I just wanted to get it started. So if there's changes that you all want to make, just let the staff know, and when we bring this thing back, we'll have those changes implemented.
Lance, I do have a random question
Sure.
when I look at this, and it's under vision, and it says where people want to live, work, and play, and where guests are welcomed. Did we change that from visitors? Was that, or did we decide on guests? It just seems awkward, especially when underneath that we're talking about our prioritized groups and we say visitors.
I don't know either. The only thing I can think of was when we added the word respectfully enjoy, that phrase. We may have changed it then to we want our guests are great, people that are here to not act the way that we would expect people to conduct themselves in our beautiful town, then maybe maybe there's other places. I don't, that's the only thing I can think of, but I noticed that too.
I guess just makes it sound like we're a hotel. I don't know. And that could just be me and a Preble preference, but it just stuck out as strange to me.
Yeah, does anyone else, long-term guys?
I can't recall, but I would suggest we just look back in the minutes and we can verify that was what that was. And if we have any concerns, we can change it moving forward.
I have a question,
Sure.
Lance. As we're talking about our rainy day funds and some of the different funds, when we get into the nuts and bolts, is there a place for where maybe an idea or something that's not on here? Where we could talk about maybe dipping into that because it's not part of the normal budgetary process like we've had. I hate to bring it up again, but the pickleball folks, and we've talked about pickleball and tennis courts and stuff like that. And it's not a high priority deal, but it might be something that if it's not in the normal budgetary arena, that our finance department, at some point, I'd like to bring that up and see if we couldn't spend $600,000 or $700,000 and go ahead and get that started, just providing more recreational activities. We got a substantial rainy day fund,
Right.
and so,
So yeah, there is absolutely an opportunity for you guys to add things that are not on this list. It's your document. Whether or not we have the funds for it, I mean, I'm sure we have the funds for it, it's just, we just have to decide what we will do and what we won't do. And I'll leave the numbers to Ms. Strickland.
at what juncture in the meeting would that be a good time to do that?
I think you could suggest that any time right now. I mean, if you want to add, is that what you really wanted to add was the,
Yeah, just, because I know we put it off twice because of funding. And we didn't want to just do two or, we want to do something a little more substantial. There's a piece of property available that not only could we build a place that would have more than enough parking, but we could actually build enough courts to where it could be used for tournaments and stuff like that, and maybe even a tennis facility. And I just thought that if we might even be able to get the TDC to kick in and make something happen a lot sooner. So next spring, all our snowbirds aren't back in here saying, why haven't we started it or planned it or anything like that? So I'd just like to throw that one
okay.
up against the wall and see what the council thinks and talk about where we could get funding to do something like that.
Very good.
I would just have one comment, Mayor, and I agree with you. Until staff and Lance turn this over to us in September after possibly the next workshop, it's their document. When they turn it over to us, then it's our document. And if there are votes to want to do that at that time, then that's the way it'll happen. So it's not precluded, and you're giving them the heads up. Maybe it'll be part of their document too, but this is their document till they give it to us.
We can do that.
I had a question, Lance.
Sir?
And I hear Councilmember Destin, but if it's their document, there's council objectives, so I just want to make sure we're clear on if there are objectives, but y'all's document, I guess we can still change it, you're saying. The Calhoun are you wanting these changes now, or now between the next meeting, we just shoot you over some comments and discussions, and then at the next meeting, you all come back with another draft, or what's the process of what you want to sit here and have the comments and suggestions?
Yeah, either way is okay. I mean,
Sure.
if you want to wait until after this and bring me the changes that you would like implemented, I can implement those, and then this will all come back at a voting meeting, and when you all will officially adopt it.
I mean, off the top of my head, underground utilities, I'm hoping is a 1 to 3 year critical priority of doing, so, it's pretty critical to me, so I would just assume that would be kind of going up, and I'll just throw these out there, and you don't have to answer or whatever, but the multi-use trail Phase 2 design and construction, under the Marler Bridge, where is that under the priority items that were identified in the visioning session? Unless I'm misunderstanding what that is.
We have not entered the design phase yet. Is that? So
It's just an important priority that's on here, but I also know that I didn't see it under the items that were identified as during a visioning session, so Was that just maybe added by staff, I guess?
Oh, I'm sorry, I did leave, there were some that were on the strategic plan from previous years that
were
had been
carried
voted
over.
on that I carried over, yeah.
Gotcha. Okay. Okay. Like complete the 2-lane crosstown connector. I mean, I'm hoping 1 to 3 years. That's pretty critical. So I would, possibly see those moved up. But those are just comments off the top of my head, I guess, if that helps or doesn't help. But just to throw out there, and I don't quite understand, Mr. Destin, what you're saying. Like, maybe I'm just not understanding the comment, but this is our document, and then we're going to vote on it at a future meeting. When do we vote to? When are we voting to make it our document?
My hope is to bring it back at the next council meeting.
And at that meeting, we throw out changes, make motions, add stuff at that particular meeting, and then,
We don't really vote on it until September, do we, Lance? You'll bring back another version at a workshop. We can't officially vote on things at workshops. He gathers what we tell him and tries to craft it where he thinks the majority of us want it to go. And then in September, there are two meetings, right?
Two,
And
yeah.
that's where we vote. And if he hasn't crafted it where we majority agree, then we change it.
and then like the question the mayor's asking, and this might be for Crystal, but on August 4th and 5th, and we're having individual sessions for capital operational budgets, is that also an additional time that we have those discussions and ideas and projects that we possibly want to discuss with you about our individual thoughts and if we can work it out? Like, if that be when we be doing that? Okay. All right, thank you.
So once I'm sure I have a decent idea of this, I'm going to hand it off to Crystal because she's going to have to work some of these into either the current year plan, the next year's plan, or the 5-year plan. So that's why I want to make sure that I have a good understanding of what your priorities are.
And like Mr. Destin said, that's why this is called a workshop, because this is just idea swapping and making and we're just crafting the document that we'll vote on in September. And so that document will change. It always has as we progress. Ms. Aber, I know you want to ask some questions.
Well, when you started, you were like, we've kind of just put these on here. We know y'all want to change them. So that's, I'm kind of like where Kevin is, like, we're not really doing this as an ours, this is theirs. When you started off the meeting, I was like, oh, okay, so you kind of like slotted stuff where you thought it should go, but realistically, ultimately, will help you remove, like, put the crosstown connector in critical, move the things back into the critical 1 and 2s.
Sure.
Because there's just one there now, which, yeah, we want the staff to be better and paid better, but, I mean, there's a couple of things that were critical, and they're now down in important. So I kind of agree with Mr. Schmidt. It's like things kind of got slid down, and I think you were saying in the beginning, we just put this out, and we'll keep moving it from here to there. Is that-
Sure. And I can tell you honestly, the reason I didn't put any of those, and they're huge, very, very important projects. The reason I didn't put them in the critical category was because that's a drop dead category. Like, we want it done by the end of this year. And like I said earlier, when we were going through the definitions, if we fall short, let's say it's the crosstown connector and you put that up there. If we fall short, then the critical category would say, we have to finish this. We have to finish on time. We need the resources. We got to do it, period. So we're going to go to one of the other projects, pickleball courts, and take that money and pour it towards. So having too many critical ones could be a challenge, especially with like undergrounding. That's a multi-year project that's going to cost millions and millions over the course of, I don't know how many years, but a lot. And
The good news is that company we hired to oversee the project has an extremely good track record of getting it done in a very good timeline. So I'm kind of encouraged that they had a couple of projects that were 5-6 years out and they got them done under 3 years. So a lot of that will, of course, depend on Gulf Power because we've got we're ready. So I'm hoping that our management team will help facilitate it to where you and I get to see it before we're gone. Anyways, so go ahead. Are you done? You ready for Miss Crystal?
I am.
Okay,
There's
any
no
other
more
questions for Lance while we have him up here? We can call him back anytime. All right.
Yes, so as Lance mentioned, the next workshop is going to focus on the capital projects. So if you don't mind, I would like to revert back to the first page of Lance's list here of the visioning session priority items. And I really would like your feedback right now, just, as a discussion. I would like to hear from you on what do you think your top 3 priorities are, because I want to make sure, I have an unfunded list now of over $100 million, okay? So I want to make sure that we really do put your top priorities up there, and that I try the best I can to get those funded, if not next year, at least within our 5-year plan. Even if it means that I need to go out for more, to borrow some more money. If it means that we need to have our grants manager work and scour the world to find more grants. I would really like to know, what are your top 3 or 4 priority projects? Because at the next meeting, I'm going to bring you the list. We have a project review team. We're looking at all of our unfunded and some of our funded projects, and we're matching all of our funding, because I have a lot of restricted money, and I have a little bit of general fund money. I have some excess in the reserves. And I'd like to know, we're going to bring and propose something to you at the next workshop about the capital side. First we have to cover our operations, right? You have to pay for the lights to be on and for the staff to show up. But the money that's left over after that, at the next meeting, I'm going to need more of your help in prioritizing, because we're not going to be able to fund everything next year. Some things might have to wait till 2023 or beyond. But I just, if you wouldn't mind, I would like to hear back from you on right now about what are your top 3 projects as you see them now. Do you mind if we start at the end and just work our way down?
No, not at all. Personally, after that amazing visioning session that we did, I like the steps that we're having in place, where the city marina, the convention center, multi-use, and I say beach acquisition, but I assume that you're also talking about not like the crosstown connector, right? Because that's already something, you're talking about new projects. Is that okay?
No, all of them. We need to, things like the crosstown connector, if you decide it's a really high priority, I don't have to wait for TPO and other funds, right?
Gotcha.
I can borrow money, or I can go out and raid our reserves right now. But
Sure.
So yeah, I would include those.
Crosstown connector is very important for me. I feel like, and I would definitely love the sports utility, the sports facility, community center, convention, multi-use, commercial, mixed-use, partnership somehow. And I think that feasibility study and figuring out how to do that would be a main priority for me. And I'm sure I might have more coming to you later another day, though.
Just knowing from firsthand experiences, I continue to believe that the staffing needs, that we need to keep that as a top of the list. Every single person that keeps leaving our staff because we don't pay them enough. And then when we hire somebody that's $15.50 an hour, and those in that same department for 2 years are making $13 an hour, we need to match those. We can't have those guys quit because someone new comes in and they've got a $15 an hour job. So we need to make that happen as soon as possible, because they're walking away as quick as I've watched it happen. So I think staffing needs and competitive pricing needs to be the top of the pile. I do like the convention center multi-use. I think that really does need to be something that we move on, because it is something that helps create a city center, and we don't have a big enough community center to do what we need to do in this city. And then after that, it's pretty much, I agree with it as it is in order. And the crosstown connector, I think, we're already pushing that. We're just trying to acquire the properties that are still left, correct?
Yeah, and I'm going to leave the 2 biggies out, because the undergrounding utilities, crosstown connector, we're going as fast and hard, I think, the council is on those 2 items. So for me, as a continuation of the public beach acquisition, we have promises of funding from the TDC, and I think we ended up with about a $22 million budget. But as that progresses, I would like to, if we can generate more funds for that, I'd like to see more acquisition. That's a win-win for everybody, politically, realistically, and even for our private citizens. So it's a acquisition initiative, a city center, which, you know, I want an ice hockey rink. But also, we morphed from a convention multi-use facility now to a city center with a public safety place for our guys to ride out hurricanes so our first responders can stay here on site. A new community center for sports complex. We got a brand new charter high school that could utilize some of that. And City Hall, if we flatten this one and the annex and that, we can make more recreational facilities right here where we already have all our recreational facilities. And so everything can be based. It would be the gateway to our CRA, and that would motivate people to come buy some of these properties, redevelop them as part of the city center, and in the end, over years, the tax base itself would pay for our investment in that. So that's big to me. And then the last thing I think probably is the Calhoun multi-use area and redevelopment down there. Those are the three big priorities. I'm thinking a little long-term versus short-term. I did bring up the pickleball courts, but I think that's a expenditure that is not cost prohibitive if we dip into the rainy day fund, maybe get a little cooperation from our county partners and Florida Sports Foundation, maybe look for some grants through them. But I think I would like, when we do the pickleball thing, I would like to put ourselves in a position where we can have off-season tournaments because sports, vacations, my grandson just played in the World Series out here at Morgan Sports Center, and I was listening to the people, and they were like, yeah, we had to pay $490 at Motel 6, and I'm thinking, there's 64 teams here and all these moms and dads, and they're eating at the restaurants and they're renting those hotels and they're buying stuff to go to the beach. And I'm thinking just that one event, and they're having another one, right? Lance, starting Tuesday? No, 5 more of those. Big. I mean, these are big. So the sports vacation deal is big for us. I wish they were coming in January and February and not in June and July, but those are the kind of things that are important to me.
I would say public beachfront acquisition would be very important. I think there's few things the city can do that makes a big impact on residents and tourists. I would say livable wages and benefits to retain staff. I missed a lot of the discussion on a community center, but if it's where I think y'all probably been eyeing, I think that property is ripe for redevelopment and not apartment buildings. So if the city could use it for the public, I think it'd be great. And then I would probably say, the crosstown connector, when you talk about speeding it up, basically you're talking about putting up the money now and then the TPO pays us back.
No, I don't think the TPO would pay us back.
Okay.
So we'd either have to wait until we show up on their budgeted schedule and the appropriation schedule, or I could, in order to speed it up, we could choose to use some of our own reserve funding or, just reallocate from some of the other projects.
Do we know how much money is slated from the TPO to come to us?
I don't have the total figure in my...
Regardless, let's just say it's $2 million. Can you not work out a deal with FDOT about going ahead and putting forward the $2 million to get the job done and they come in and reimburse us? I think that's fairly common.
I think with the property that we need to acquire still, we would purchase it up front and then we would get reimbursed, but it is during a specific calendar year or fiscal year.
Sure.
So it's coming up, this July 1, I believe, starts the fiscal year where we've got funding available.
Well, that's for the right-of-way construction, and we have a signed award for that. The $2.7 million comes available in July. So we have right-of-way acquisition money, but now we need to, I'm waiting for construction money.
Okay.
And we don't have that subaward agreement signed yet. And no, normally the, most grant agreements, especially the reimbursement grants that we have these days, they usually say that they will not reimburse us for expenditures prior to such and such a date, and it's pretty rare that they would go too far back in time. They need to, go through their budget process and get appropriated first.
Okay. I'd say that and underground utilities.
Well, I like all the priorities on the list, but I think that we have to concentrate on the ones that we can do without bankrupting the city. We're already well on the way to the crosstown. We've got our funding sources in place as long as everything pans out like we think it will. The convention center's last multi-use, that would be the only parcel that we've looked at is the old Pottery Barn, talking 15 or $20 million probably. Unless we get grants, that would bankrupt the city. Making our salaries competitive is important. We don't want to keep losing our employees, so that would be a priority. We are implementing the intergov. That one's being done. The others on the list, it looks to me like, with the exception of perhaps a parking lot with the fish cleaning and the mayor's pickle board, those two we could actually do, and without putting ourselves in financial peril. So, we'll have to see how the votes shake out, but the bigger ones, unless we can get some grant money, they're beyond our ability to do at the moment. And while they are wonderful, and I like the sound of them, to put the city in a precarious financial situation, I would not vote to do that.
Yeah, probably.
All right, so I was trying to look at this both sort of realistically and logically, and everything looks great, but when I think about the state of the city right now and the problems that we're having, do I want to bring in a convention center? Or do I want to build a brand new marina? Well, yeah, maybe so, but we've got to deal with the issues that we've got first, such as infrastructure. And so for me, I was looking at things, what can we do that's going to cost us not so much, that maybe we can even partner with, and then tackle some of these other ones that we want. And one of the things that comes to mind is annexation, because then we would generate that tax coming from those little enclaves that we have all over the place and make us fully cohesive one city. I also look at that trolley, building that transit trolley to get some people off the roads and moving them back and forth as people movers, so to speak. And then I look at beautification and appearance of the entire city, which in a way also goes to wayfinding. We want a beautiful, appealing city. We're having ongoing issues with the medians, with trash everywhere. So these are things that we could actually do. And then, of course, start looking at staff. Well, I think staffing is actually probably right up there too, but staffing, of course, is needed to help address some other issues. But marina and a pier is something, it's just crazy that we don't have either one as the luckiest fishing village. So I've been a proponent of that for a while. Linear trail, these are all wonderful things, but they're going to essentially and ostensibly bring more folks here. So we've got to figure out how to get people moving here better and have a prettier city to bring them to before we start looking at some of these bigger projects that are going to have even more folks coming in. So that's kind of how I dissected it. In terms of, everyone was talking about, a sports center and everything, and of course I do love that idea, but I do know from watching the minutes of the last TDC meeting that when they were talking about the expansion at that meeting, they were also talking about sports tourism and the possibilities when they do expand of bringing in more opportunities for sports tourism. And they were talking a lot about Fort Walton Beach having some great opportunities, and of course we already do. But that may not be something we need to look at doing right here if it's something that's going to be spread out in an area that has more land. So just my thoughts.
Yeah, thank you, I appreciate that. Any last comments before we move into just the operating overview?
On the idea of annexation, increasing our tax base that way, that is a voter referendum type process. Is it, or you just, for general information, it's a pretty tough
It
road to
depends
hoe,
on
isn't it?
the number of acres that you're bringing in. So yes, if we were trying to expand all the way out to Fort Walton County, that would definitely be a voter referendum type issue, yes.
I've talked to some residents with real stormwater issues behind Walmart and maybe Indian Lakes and stuff. I think there are some neighborhoods that would be worth talking to. Kelly Plantation would be tough. I mean, there's areas that would definitely be tough, but I think we've been talking about it for 10 years. You could test the waters with somebody, and, there's protections that you might be able to add to, basically, you've got to incentivize them somehow. And
Is that a process, though, that we do begin through the budgetary side of things, or is that one that we just tackle that elephant through the council process and bring it up? Webb?
I'm sorry, I think we're talking about annexation. I was having a side conversation. Yeah, some of that will require some financial resources in order to investigate, and it depends on what the strategy would, be for annexation. There's a lot of different large enclaves and small enclaves, but we can.
And the incentives that we might offer.
That's correct. And so we have been looking at this logistically, so if y'all assign it as a priority, we'll invest more time and actually bring back a plan that we could look at implementing.
Yeah, and just the last thing I'll say about it, for the 5-6 years I've been involved in the city, I've always had people tell me there's no way you can do it, but we've never actually tried, and so I would like to at least see an effort somewhere. I think the city owes it to itself, because, these neighborhoods use our services, whether they like it or not. It would be nice if they'd pay into them. But, everybody says, you can't do that, you can't do that. We've never tried.
A lot of them that live.
It's a tough road.
A lot of them that live in those subdivisions think they live in Destin, because I get their phone calls, and so do y'all. Is that something that any of you council members would like to start that ball rolling? I don't think there's anybody sitting here right now that's against that idea. Should we do that, begin that discussion here in the budgetary process, is basically what I'm getting at, or should we just take that up as an agenda item at a meeting and start it that way?
If we have a priority, if we understand that it's a priority, we can bring back what we think it would require from a budget standpoint and a resource standpoint, because this is also not just about finances, it's also about staff time and our ability to execute. So we can budget all of that at one time.
Y'all want to include that with some of their reports?
I'm fine with it, because it's already on there as a desirable priority, so I think it's kind of a direction that we're already looking at. I agree with.
For them to look at it, I don't have a problem with. But in my first year on this council in 1985, that was one of our priorities. So, should we, until we have something to offer that the folks outside the city have to have, it's most likely not going to go forward, and to spend a lot of money and staff time especially, push on it, makes me think maybe it's not such a great idea.
Too high up in the clouds, perhaps? Well, we just nipped that in the bud. Go ahead.
Okay, with that, I'm going to launch into our operational budget, because as I mentioned, after we cover our operating costs, then we can see how much money we have to do other fun capital projects with. And just one before we launch into all of these numbers, a budget is not just a collection of numbers, but an expression of our values and aspirations. And as you all probably, some of you may have noticed in last year's budget, I really tried hard to make sure that our capital budget had at least 80% of the funding in the capital budget was attributed to items that were noted as priorities on our visioning sheet. And I hope we can do that or even better this coming year. I'd like to start off with a little bit of good news. Our taxable property values went up. As a matter of fact, we are finally valued at just over $6 billion, which is where we were at the peak back in 2007, before the fall. So we're back up there. Billion. And so this is what it translates into funding for the city. This is at our current millage rate of 1.615. The general fund area increased 7.6%. So we have an additional $600,000 coming into the general city area. The 2 CRAs, those are restricted. That's not our money. It goes right into the CRAs. Only the CRAs can spend it. Town Center CRA did really well. Their values are going to bring in an additional $107,000 this year, so that's up 36, almost 37%. And the Harbor CRA area also had an increase. So this shows I'm expecting to bring in about $9.4 million in ad valorem this year. 8.6 of that, well, 95% of that, of 8.6 is what I can apply towards our budget, our operational budget.
How would you explain the discrepancy in Town Center and Harbor CRA? Because there's always been one. The Harbor CRA's always lagged.
The biggest reason for lag is the property appraiser's hands are kind of tied, right? He can only increase values at a certain rate per year, and until those properties change hands. And the harbor parcels tend not to change hands.
We also had some new development, significant development in the Town Center CRA this year.
Let's see. That's right, that's what happens when you build. So this is just a reminder of what the millage is. So if we had a property taxable value of $100,000 at 1.615 mils, that would be $161 for a household that they would give to the city. Another interesting piece is the median real property value in our zip code of 32541 increased from 420,000 up to 475,000 over the last 12 months. So all of these numbers in this slide I adjusted up to our current median property value of $475,000. So if you have a home valued at that median range, they would give to the city $767 this year per home. And then just below that, I show the difference if we changed our millage rate by 1/10, if we went from 1.6 up to 1.7, that would be a difference of about $585,000 to the city. So if you wanted to consider increasing the millage rate, you have an idea of how much more money that would bring in. I'm not recommending that for this year. Let's let the dust settle. I have a lot of changes going on. But if you have a project that you really, really want, you know, it's something that you could consider as a source. Let's go on to the next. So this is how your $767 per household is spent in the city. About 30% of that goes to cover general government, 28% for public safety, which is the sheriff's contract, plus everything related to our building inspection, enforcing Florida Building Code, the building officials, the permit techs, and also our emergency operations. And then about 24% goes to supporting culture and recreation, which is our library and our community center, our Morgan's sports fields, Joe's Bayou and so forth. And then about 13% goes towards transportation-related things, so roads, sidewalks, streetlights. And that's how the revenues are spent. These numbers are going to be, you're going to see them changing slightly. I'm trying to get to a point where we're allocating better to those primary categories. Right now, we have an awful lot of expense, like all of the Microsoft technology, all currently gets debited under general government. But if we lost the library tomorrow, or this building and public, or public works, we would lose all of that expense. So I'm trying to make sure that we do a better counting in the city to put our actual costs where the divisions are. But this is what it looks like today. Here's our general fund revenues. Taxes is more than just ad valorem, but you can see those are going up about 7%. Licenses and permits. There's a very big change that we're working on right now regarding the licensing and permitting category. The state of Florida wants us to pull the building fund out separate. So everything related to, all of the revenues related to building permits are going to be pulled out of the general fund, and they have to be put in their own special revenue fund. The state prefers an enterprise fund, but I'm just putting it into a special revenue fund. And then they want all of the expenses related to enforcing Florida building code applied there. Bottom line is they're trying to make sure that our building permit fees are not subsidizing general government. They have a new rule now that if your revenues are higher than your building expenditures, you have to give that money back to the citizens. Because we haven't been so perfect in our accounting, we don't really know right now the true cost of running our building department. So I'm working on better applying our technology costs in particular, but all kinds of things. Their vehicles are charged to general government. Right? If we didn't have a building inspector and building officials, we wouldn't have those vehicles. So I'm just trying to put all of those expenses in there to show the true cost of running this division. So anyway, and the state of Florida is requiring that. So we're working on that. And then that becomes the basis for establishing your fees.
What's the timeline the state gave you to accomplish that?
This is something that I just discovered in the last month reading through some old statutes. They wanted us to start implementing this in 2019. So I'm going back to 2020 and I'm reclassifying everything for this year to date. So I'll bring forth a budget amendment for this year, but I'm going to bring forward the last 2 years worth of figures to put in, balance to put into this fund.
That makes my head hurt thinking you having to do that.
So Crystal, if we charge more for the permits, we have to give it back to them. If we didn't charge enough, do we send them a bill?
No.
I didn't figure that's the way it worked.
Nope, but we need to work on creating a solid base to show exactly what our expenditures are, and that is the basis to creating the fees. Mm-hmm. So the building fund and building permits is going to be a decrease. In addition, some of our state shared revenues are going down, like the communication sales tax has been trending down, gas taxes have been trending down. I put in my best guess for now. At the end of June or early July, the Florida Department of Economic Research will be publishing their numbers, and it's just good practice to use their figures. So they'll tell us pretty soon what the city of Destin can be expecting, and I'll plug those numbers in before the next workshop. So anyway, here's our revenues. We adopted 28 million. My projection through the end of the year, I'm estimating we're going to receive about 23 million. The difference is related to capital projects and capital grants. For example, we're not going to receive that last 2 million from the county for a third beach parcel purchase this year. That's going to happen next fiscal year. So I can't recognize the revenue this year. We have a few other capital grants. We haven't progressed far enough along in them this year. So those revenues will probably come in next year, but I just had to, reduce our projected for this year down. Let's see. And here's some of the revenue highlights. Capital grants are lower than last year. Ad valorem taxes are up, and the permits, I was just mentioning, the permit fees are going to go out into their building fund. Just so that you know, some of the projects I've been working on, I'm reviewing and revising our schedule of fees for all of the departments, including Parks and Recreation. For example, we don't have a non-refundable deposit when those big tournaments come in and they schedule our fields. Right now, we have an issue. Sometimes they'll just leave. They'll say, oh, never mind. We're actually going to do our tournament in Niceville. And it just happens. So we have a few changes we're going to make there. Community development fees, you'll notice at the next council meeting, we'll be bringing forth a contract to review our impact fees. So we'd like to, we think we're definitely in a good position to increase our impact fees. And we're working on the electric franchise fee, but of course, as you know, when we finally negotiate that, we'll also come to you requesting a resolution to restrict those funds towards undergrounding. And as mentioned earlier, we are exploring incorporating certain parcels that are already within our city limits, with some smaller annexations that won't require voter referendum. And maybe we'll look at the bigger picture, or maybe we won't. That's clearly something looks like you'd like to discuss some more. Let's go on to, so here's our expenditures. I showed our expenditures in this packet in two different ways. This is more of a functional way that probably is how you run your businesses. So you can see personnel, how much of the work do you contract out, how much is just for your general operations. We have contributions, contingencies, debt service, capital outlays. And then I have another version here. This is by the state of Florida's categories. So you can see how much we spend on these different categories. And you might notice, so my 2022 projected, so I'm projecting in about 24 million in revenues. But right now I have put in only about 23 million in expenditures. So there's a little bit of extra money in there that we'll probably give to a capital project. We haven't finished working through all of our capital projects yet.
What accounts for the vast difference in the debt service?
That's the refunding that I just did.
Okay.
So we refunded the 2015 general fund debt, and now, so the general fund has a far less debt. The other restricted monies will be paying off the remaining debt, the new debt. And here are some of the highlights. Oh, I'd like to highlight one more thing before we go forward. Looking at the top at the personnel. So you're talking about how adjusting our wages is a top priority for the city. You might notice here that for 2021, we adopted a personnel budget of 6.4 million. When we adopt these budgets, we assume worst case scenario. We assume we're going to be 100% fully staffed, that all of our staff are going to take 100% advantage of all of our benefits, and that we're going to put everybody at a certain level. Well, our 2021 projected, you'll notice, is coming in at about $1 million less. You know why that is? It's because we've had a lot of unfilled positions. Even right now, we have, I think it's 9 full-time and 9 part-time positions that we're recruiting for. We've never been fully staffed all year long. We've constantly had this, been recruiting, and had a hard time of it. In addition, most of our staff, as you're going to see, about 62% of our staff earn less than $40,000 a year, which, by the way, means that they can't take advantage, for example, of our full retirement benefit system because they don't have that extra 5% of wiggle room to be able to put in there. So we're not spending out on that as well. So that's why we have budget, we have adopted budget, and we could implement that now, if you say so. I believe there's an item at the next council meeting, and that's something that you're going to have to vote on.
So Crystal, you've only increased it for 2022 by, what, 300 and some thousand? I understand that you didn't spend the full 6 million, but in your opinion, that's enough of an increase to accomplish what is obviously a priority to all of us?
That's correct.
Which is getting the prices up?
That's correct.
So we'll have to cut back on some of those unfilled positions Is 300,000 enough to get
No,
everybody?
my numbers include, and they assume that we're going to be fully staffed,
Okay, so we've only
including the
got,
2 new positions that were approved at recent council meetings.
right, so we have how many positions?
I'm going to get to that slide in just
Okay,
a
so I'm
second.
trying to
And
do
we'll
a
come
per,
back.
per person, what projected increase is.
Yes.
to
Oh, I
see
have
if
that
that's-
too.
Okay.
Dear, thank you. General fund expenditures, we looked at briefly. Here are some of the highlights. The personnel budget is the most important, and I assumed in this budget that we would fill all of the vacant positions, and at the last second, somebody reminded me, we don't have 8 full-time, we actually have 9 full-time positions that we're recruiting for right now. I assumed in this budget that we would increase to more livable wage type levels. And I'm also assuming that health insurance is going to increase 10%. We have our brokers looking out right now to see, shaking the world in the industry and requesting bids for our health insurance. So let's see, what else do we have? And I also, so currently our minimum, our lowest our lowest wages paid is $10.42 an hour. And if we just increase by that 4%, 2% COLA, 2% merit, year after year, we're not going to meet the federal deadline of $15 per hour by 2026. So this budget assumes that we will make it, that we're going to increase that bottom at the $10 range, we're going to increase them up to $13.50 an hour. And some of these are, you need to have some, you always have room for some minimum wage level positions, right? You want young people coming in and learning, but it shouldn't be the bulk of your staff. No, this is the federal deadline. Yeah,
Is there a federal deadline?
that's the federal deadline. He's saying it for the record. Yes.
Right. Okay, I know there's a state one. I thought they were still fighting about that in the federal system. Nope.
It's the state one, and I thought it had moved on forward through the federal system. We can double
We'll
check.
find out.
The state one was passed on as a amendment to the
It was, and
Constitution.
that's 2026, is to my best of my knowledge, and I could be wrong. The folks up in Washington are still fighting over it. So,
I
we'll
think
see.
you're correct.
I
Still,
stand
we
corrected.
still got a state mandate by
That's right.
by 26, so.
Last thing here we have, so as I mentioned before, the capital outlays for 2022 are still under review. Thank you for your feedback, because that's going to help us reprioritize our list a bit. These were some initial numbers that I was finding, different amounts of money from different places that could be applied to the capital projects. We have approximately $6 million in capital grants coming in. Renewal and replacement fund balances at I'm projecting it'll be at 1.3 million. OCA half penny fund balance will be at 4 million, and you'll apply that according to the resolution on half penny money that you have. And we have 2.6 money currently in impact fees. There's different types of impact fees, and those have to be spent on growth necessitated projects. So these are some of the funds I'll be looking at the next session and trying to apply the right types of funds to the right types of projects.
Is it the gas tax that we gave to our public safety committee to bring back ideas on expenditure?
There are 2 gas taxes that we receive. One of them, we're giving 100% to the millage and the milling and restriping program for our streets. And the second one is for growth necessity, it's for traffic-related projects that are referenced in our comprehensive plan. So those are restricted as well. I'm not sure, I haven't been to, that's one of the few committees that I haven't attended yet. We did give them 10% of our Okaloosa half penny money to work with. None was budgeted this year, but they have a project that they want to do right now. That might be another budget amendment. Otherwise, it might be just something we adopt for this coming year.
Thank you.
Okay, let's see. Did I skip over it? Here we are. Here's our personnel. So currently, we have 94 full-time positions and 28 part-time positions. 9 of the full-time are currently vacant, and 8 of the part-time are currently vacant. So back to this budget, we assumed the 2% cost of living, 2% merit, health insurance, where we believe will increase at least 6%. The 2 new positions that we added this year are the permit tech and the plans examiner. And at 6.6 million for next year, that would equate to 48% of our general operating budget, or general operating expenditures. This is where I have a few numbers for you. 62% of our staff currently earn less than $40,000 a year. 75% earn less than 50. The median hourly, okay, so the lowest paid is at $10.42 an hour. We have a large group of those who are, those are like our day camp counselors. So these are people who are just part-time seasonal. And that one I would like to increase up to $13.50 an hour, $13 to $15 an hour, depending on the responsibility levels. So the median hourly wage for the city workers, this includes all of us, is $17.54 an hour, which equates to $36,400 a year. So it's really low. Yeah. What I would like to do is I would like to move our median up to $21.15 an hour, which equates to nearly $44,000 a year. That would move 52%. So we would have 52% of our staff earning between $31,000 and $50,000 a year. So it's a move in the right direction. And did you have any more questions on that? 122 staff members.
So that comes out to, would be an average, if everybody got the same, of around $3,000, more or less?
Well, you have people down at the lower end
Well, I
who will be
understand. I'm averaging.
receiving like a 30% increase, and then you have people up at the top end who might be receiving like a 2% increase. So
Yeah.
it
Just-
varies greatly, and we're just we're looking at the wage studies and comparing to the surrounding cities and different things, and we're just trying to bring our professional class into something livable where they don't have to have second jobs, because most of the city staff actually do have second jobs.
Do we have a study that points to which of our workers are in most need of an increase?
Yes, we do. Maintenance techs and others, and Nicole's here, and she has been looking at all these wage studies. Some of them are a little bit old, but she's been updating them with information from our peers.
And this projection is crafted to align with that?
That's correct.
Well, I'd be interested in seeing the details. I'll get with you. Thanks.
Yes. So just along as I mentioned earlier, what I'm really trying to do with the city is I'm trying to either direct expenses better to their categories so that you get a more true picture of the general government, which is actually pretty small for a city this size, versus how much we're really investing in our parks and rec. And so this is just an example of one of the worksheets I've been working out, and this one is to better allocate out all of our communication and software expenses, like Munis. Everybody uses the accounting software Munis to know where they are. Everybody uses the Microsoft suite, Word and Excel and these things. So this is just an example of the direction we're moving there. So we're also working to better capture and highlight the contributions that the city makes. Nobody's really recorded or put a value on the fact that we do all of the landscaping for Maddie Kelly. Between the labor and equipment, I estimate it's probably about $30,000 a year in a donation that we give. We have a lot of...
So we do that as donation, like that's the labor of love from the city of Destin to manage and clean and tidy up their landscaping, and basically is it a tax write-off?
No, no, we don't pay taxes So it's not a tax write-off. This was, as I understand it, there was an agreement put in place when they incorporated in the city, except that they're a foundation and they don't pay municipal taxes, ad valorem taxes. So it's basically a donation that we give, and there's an agreement. But we just haven't, I'm from a background where we put a value on donations that we give, even if we give of our time or our labor. And so I'm going to, yeah. So I'm going to make sure that we record these things. Same thing with the rent subsidies. Normally, we would collect a certain amount of rent, and we as a landlord, that would help us in time replace a roof, fix a foundation, deal with all of these issues. But we're charging $1 a year for most of these places. So I'm just trying to get to, so that you as a city, and we can be proud of how much we donate. Yeah, we need to show it. And here, this is a summary of the change in fund balance. I'm going to slide right into the details. So if you're wondering, okay, this fund balance that we foresee here of, what did I project? I can't see that far. Isn't that terrible? So we foresee, I'm projecting in 2020, at the end of 2021, we're going to have a fund balance of about $28 million. Well, where is all of that money? Well, most of it's restricted. And so here I listed out the details on all of the restricted fund balances. The towns, a lot of these are restricted by the state regulations. I can't just spend these on anything. I can't spend it on general operations. The CRA fund balances, the debt service sinking funds are restricted by debt covenants. We have grant agreements where we promised our grantors exactly what we'd spend the funds on. So we have 4.6 of that 28 million is restricted by outside agreements. And internally, we've restricted another $15 million with resolutions that were passed by council. So this is like we restricted how we're going to spend the Okaloosa half-penny money. We're not spending that on operations. We're spending that on beach acquisitions and other things. We have a technology fund where we take a percentage of certain application license and permit fees, and we put that aside so that we could help pay for major technology improvements like Energov. The parking fund is one that we've discussed at a past meeting, and we're going to bring that again probably in August or September to see if you really want to restrict that and just use that for parking, to address parking issues in the future. So that's the 15 million of my 2021 projection. And then we also have open purchase orders. So I've already signed contracts with people. I don't want to spend their money, on something else. And that brings us to the end. Oh, wait, here. I've listed out some of the grants that I know that we have. The TPO Stallman, I believe that's not going to be a direct grant to the city, but it'll be funded to somebody who's going to invest that much into our area. And here we are at the questions and discussion part. And I'll pause for a minute and see if you have any questions. And then if you don't mind, I'd like to just give you a short orientation to one report that I added in the packet at the back. But I just wanted to pause, see if you have any questions or thoughts.
Question, maybe I'm confused. The $450,000 drop in the revenue from the permits, isn't the expenses that will be associated with that also will go over to that? So that it's not really a 450,000 hole in the general revenue. It's going to be, they go together.
That's correct. They go together.
So when we find out what our actual expenses are, or what we can say are, hopefully it's a wash, or we're going in the hole. That way that would justify changing the.
That's absolutely correct.
And they're going to give us a report on the fee structure, your findings at that point. So we'll get both of those pretty much simultaneously. Is that the goal?
We have certain fees that I'm going to bring a schedule of fees before you for adoption. Some of the fees we know right now. For example, The library thinks it's not cool anymore to charge late fees on books because it's more expensive to replace the books when people are afraid to bring them back and then, so we're going to get rid of late fees at the library. There's certain fees that we would like to update right now. Other fees, we need studies completed by experts, rate studies done. So you're going to start seeing, I can't remember what we just brought forth, but impact fees. We're going to bring forth a request to hire a consulting firm to review our impact fees, and that'll take a while.
So what if they don't bring the book back anyways?
Oh, no, they'll bring it back.
Ms. Aber?
Great report. So far, I'm just absolutely over the moon that you've gotten all the numbers, especially when it comes to the head count and what we're paying our employees and what we need to be paying them, and that we do have plenty of reserves to take care of them as soon as possible. The other thing I was questioning, the beach acquisition, the $2,285,000. I know that we have 3 parcels. One's done, one's in the process, and what's the process on the third one? 'Cause I
Yeah,
know it's
so
in.
2 of them are complete, and the third one, we get little updates every now and then on, well, maybe October, maybe November. So we keep getting little updates. As soon as we know something firm, we'll share it with council. But I have enough Okaloosa Half Penny money saved up, so we're in it, we're ready from our side. Well, if there are no more, any comments, or it is a workshop, you're free to speak and ask questions, right? That's what we're here for.
No, I'll just say the wages for the staff did seem awfully low, and I don't know how they compare to area municipalities and counties. But I think that comparison would be nice visual for us to see how low they actually are for market value of this class. And it would be nice if the city of Destin provided jobs that allowed for city of Destin employees to live in the city of Destin. I think that's probably a pretty noble thing to strive towards. I know our housing market's kind of out of whack right now and it's unaffordable for a lot of people. But if we could close that parity, I think that'd be a good thing for the city to do.
Yeah, and it's, we will be bringing those back. We put out public records requests to all of our neighboring cities and Okaloosa County as well. Some we have back, some we don't. Our HR director's working on that. And I will just also mention you have to take it all with a little grain of salt because we are different. Our peers are mostly in the Florida retirement system, and probably also, and we're not. We don't pay, so you come to work for us as a city as a long-term volunteer or a long-term employee. We're not paying into Social Security either, so you can't expect that check at the end of the day either. So, I agree with you. I think that by my calculation, you need at least $42,000 a year to afford like a 1-bedroom within a 12-mile radius of Destin. To be able to live, independently. And I find that most of our staff aren't at a place. They have to have roommates and second jobs.
I have one question for you, Crystal. The salary increases that we anticipate, those are what we call reoccurring expenses. They happen every year, they happen every month. If you don't pay for those with reoccurring revenues, then you've set yourself up for a disaster. I see that our ad valorem increase is 600, 700,000. So half of that would be going toward the salary increases. Do we have any other reoccurring revenue that we are kind of allocating to pay for that? Or is that the only one we have?
That's the main recurring revenue that we have. And the way I'm projecting it out, it should work. We're going to have to increase other fees to continue covering the other expenses that are not related to salaries. But I projected it out 50 years. And
do you have a estimate of what those are? After all, insurance 6%, that equates out to quite a lot. And there are a number of other things. So my question is, how much of the increase from ad valorem taxes will we eat up with these salary increases? And you can answer that later, but it's just, something we need to know because When you have reoccurring expense, you're going to have a reoccurring revenue source or you're in trouble.
And also, you showed us our percentages being spent on general government. Maybe we could look at that exact number, how that'll change our expenses in that category as we move in that direction to increase our deals. So
Yeah,
we can see that on a chart.
Yeah, exactly. So that's what we're working on, is when we more properly define and allocate our expenses, then we know what we're really supposed to be charging in fees, and we're updating our fee schedules accordingly. For example, there's kind of a rule of thumb, Parks and Rec, that you want that to be covered at least 25% by the fees. You know, Joe's Bio brings in a lot of money, but some of our other parks do not. But we just look at the whole picture, and we're trying to set our fees to make sure that everything gets covered properly.
I noticed that in your chart showing the breakdowns of percentages that it was fairly even keeled outside of the 13% for, roads and stuff. Is that how a municipality should kind of look? I know Parks and Recreation is always an expenditure, but that's what people want, that's how we're serving our citizens that live here. So is as you restructure that, will that give us a clearer picture of where we're at?
Yeah, that's exactly right. As I work through it, we'll have a more clear picture. And you're right, people want Parks and Rec. They want libraries and recreation facilities, but they need to know the cost, the true cost to the city, and they need to choose to pay for it. Another thing that I've been working on is updating for every capital project that we have. I have a specific, like a rap sheet on the project, and I've been working on putting in the effect on operating. So I need to know, if I add this park, how much is it going to cost me per year to operate that park? For example, we just added Leonard Destin Park, right? That FDEP promised to pay us operating costs for 10 years so that we could bring that park on. But the thing is, the award they gave us, they assumed that we would be finished and we would have started the operations some number of years ago. So the figures that they put in there, they don't recognize today's values. And they don't recognize, I sat down with Lisa, we worked out the number of hours that we need a human staffing that park to run the splash pad. And we figure we need at least 1.5 FTEs to keep the park going from dawn till dusk. And so we're going to go back to FDEP and ask if they can update our grant.
That's critical, because this council is responsible for making all these decisions based on budgetary considerations. Right. And so the more knowledge that you can give them, the more accurate their voting or their policies will be on how to vote too. So I just want to thank you for approaching it from that standpoint, because not only that, but now the public can also see what it takes and what it costs, which makes their final decisions a little bit more defensible if there's any controversy. So, that information, I'm looking forward to it as we go through these next workshops and these next meetings, as you parse that stuff out. It's going to help.
I'm working as furiously as I can. In my perfect world, I would have rap sheets for each of those projects that I think are going to be most likely funded. In my perfect world, I would have those available for you at the next workshop when you're deciding on how you want to spend your capital dollars. No promises. Might not get there till August, but I'm shooting for that, working for it.
I have one question for you. I know that you have committed about $6 million for 3 months emergency ops. Did we have to dig into that at all this year with the COVID issue? No? Excellent.
No, the CARES grant came in and covered for us very well.
Thank you. I have to tell you, this is, my 7th year sitting up here, and this has been the most clear, concise, and easily understood presentation I can recall. So thank you for that.
Thank you.
I hope we're paying you enough, because you've done a great job on this.
and I'm just so lucky to live in this area. It's really, yeah, it's a dream come true to be here. Thank you.
I gotta take her fishing.
Oh, my gosh.
She likes to fish.
I love to fish. And if you would just bear with me just for a couple more minutes, I would just like to orient you, just because I noticed a lot of the council meetings, you're wondering, well, what have we restricted? Are we really, is that available for anything? So if you don't mind, Matthew, would you put up the, here we go. Okay, so every month at your second council meeting, I've been bringing forward a very summarized version of this expenditure summary report. This one that I'm going to walk you through right now, it was in your packets. I unhid a bunch of the funds so that you can kind of see the bigger picture. And we're just going to kind of scroll through these pages a little bit. I'm not sure, can I scroll with this? Probably not, huh? This is just for, could you just gently scroll? So first, we're starting with the general fund that I share with you every month. Keep scrolling down.
That was the last document in our briefing.
This was the
materials.
last document in your council packet.
Yeah, and it shows actuals 10/1/20 to 04/30/21.
That's correct.
Okay. I'll follow you here because I can't
Yes.
see.
Yes. I thank goodness I kind of have it memorized because I can't see that either. Let's see. So we started off with the general fund. Then we go on, these two funds are restricted. We've got the Town Center CRA, which you might notice is still very much in the negative. I'd like them to start paying us back, and that'll be another source for us. The Harbor CRA is starting to look good, but I want them to improve their fund balance a little bit before I have them start investing heavily into big projects in the area. Next page. We have the building fund, which is a work in progress. I'm still working through these numbers, working with all the staff to build this up. That'll be restricted fund, and that'll be on our financial statements pulled out separately to report up to the state. The parking fund that we've talked about, here you see we think very conservatively, we might get in $250,000 or more next year for this. And about 20% of that, or $50,000, is what we now spend on the collection process from the gateways and the credit card fees and all of these other collection type fees. I'm going to be working, I meant to get numbers from Michael on exactly what he needs for resurfacing and restriping, but that would also come out of here. There's some other ideas that Webb will bring forward when we work on this resolution. Let's keep scooting forward so you can just see what restricted funds look like. The tech fund, again, this is another one that's tucked away into the general fund, but here it's pulled out for detail, so you can see the money we've been setting aside from application and permit and license fees to invest in our technology. Okaloosa Half Penny, you can see, is another restricted fund. And then on the next page, we start getting into the debt service sinking funds. This is how I make sure we have enough cash in certain restricted bank accounts to make sure we pay our debt on time. Keep going down. Oh yeah, the 2009 one is zero for next year because we paid that piece of debt off. But we still have the 2013, 2014, and then now we have the 2021 pieces of debt. So those are different debt service sinking funds. And then we go into the 300 is our renewal and replacement fund. So the $2 million that we invested in there, it looks like we're going to have about $1.3 million left in that account when we finish out this year. But since we put it in there, we're going to continue with that balance, add a little more next year, continue with our renewal and replacement program to make sure we've got enough to replace windows, replace roofs, replace, all the big pieces when they come due, and a lot of things are already due in the city. Keep going on. The next page we have two capital project funds. This was from bonds that were issued. One bond that was issued in 2002, another one in 2009. I spent that money out this year, so those are going to be zero going forward. Next page is the 305, this is my grant fund. So when grantors give us money, I restrict it in here, make sure we don't spend it elsewhere. The last one is the impact fee fund, which is another restricted fund. And that, oh, and then we go down to the last page, you'll recognize. So all of those dark things are things that I've hidden in our monthly packets to you. It's just for us internally to make sure we don't spend somebody else's money that we've restricted for something. And then the last page we reviewed, well, we review at every council meeting, so you know how much is your unassigned fund balance. And then down below, I unhid all of my numbers, so you can see where, how did she come up with how much money is restricted or how much money is committed. So that's the big picture. So if you're ever wondering what's restricted and what isn't, you can take a look here or ask me.
Thank you so much. Definitely echo a lot of everybody's comments about how amazing it all is, and a lot that goes into that, a lot of hours, and so thank you. A couple questions. One, general fund, culture and recreation. Is there a summary of what that encompasses? Is it easy to, or is it on here, or? Not the dollar amount, but I guess kind of what that means. Is that part of Parks and Rec, or?
Yeah, so these, on the general fund page, if you look at how we categorize our major expenses, these are all defined by the state of Florida. So, for example, physical environment, any guesses? That is stormwater and cemeteries. So I know, right? I don't make this stuff up. I just follow their rules. All of the municipalities, all the counties, we all try to code things the same way, and we report on up to the state. Culture and recreation, for the city of Destin, that's our library, community center, Morgan's Sports Center, and all of those extra little parks, Joe's Bayou, Keller North and South, all of these little parks that we have.
Okay, and I know you have a magic formula, I'm sure, and there's also actuals and things that go into all of it, but when we look at the 2022 projection, and it is higher than the 2021 projections are lower than what we budgeted for in a lot of these expenditure categories. But then we look at our 2022 projections, which are just a little bit below what we were budgeting in 21, where you get the, why you're increasing this category by this much, even though the budget compared to last year and all that stuff. Could you answer that?
I love this question.
Appreciate it.
So we at the City of Destin, we believe in, they call it zero balance budgeting. So each year we ask all of our directors, they come in with a clean slate, nothing. HR and I, we look and we estimate personnel costs, but we ask each of our directors to tell us, well, I'm going to need this much for this much money to do a harbor capacity study, which is a one-off $100,000 things. I need to send my 5 code enforcement people, 3 of them need their level 2 code enforcement reviews, 4 of them need their level 3s. And I'm going to need money to send them to these 2 different locations. So it's a zero-balanced budgeting concept where they have to justify all of these numbers. Physical environment is going up because our stormwater specialist, she's been charged to transportation. But if I follow the state of Florida rules, she needs to be charged, the stormwater specialist needs to be charged to physical environment. So some of these are changing because of changes in coding that I'm making, but some of them, a lot of them are changing because the directors have told me exactly what they need, how many officials that they need to do, timekeeping and scoring at our games, how many tournaments they expect to have, and all of these types of things.
So would it be fair to say then that the numbers that are in your projections are based more off of their actual requests and what they're wanting to do with the money rather than what we did last year as an actual and then using a percentage to increase it? It's more of, here's what we want to do and this is why we need 4.4 in the general government or whatever.
Yeah,
Okay.
it's in some cases like utilities, I assumed a 3% increase. But in most of the cases, most of the projected expenditures, we've gone through and decided, IT knows exactly how many humans full-time we're going to need. We know what workstations need to be upgraded. So most of the budgeted in the 2022 budget projection, it's not simply an increase over, our year-to-date projection or anything. It's actually the director said, I need this, and this is the reason why.
Just a comment, and I'm curious, on those categories, would it not be beneficial for us to kind of know what makes up a lot of those requests from them? So is there not a priority list of, like we have a priority list with this of, somebody would love 3.639 in the parks and culture, recreation, but if we're going to start recommending changes or cuts or something, is that a priority? What makes that up so we can maybe feel okay with saying maybe it should drop by $50,000 or something? I'm just asking.
If you did decide that some of these numbers look too high and you would like a director to come and defend their budget, you can do that. They go through several levels of review as it is, and they work with me and we decide what's reasonable. We bring it to Lance to say, would you like to do this? For example, let's see, I'm looking at culture and recreation. There's been a lot of demand and request for additional holiday decorations. It's probably not necessary to our health and well-being to have that, but we put it in the budget if I feel that something else is a higher priority or the city manager feels something is a higher priority, we might go to the director and say, maybe we can't do that this year.
Thank you for entertaining my questions.
And Kevin, just to build on what Shad said, I think also is, this is not like the governor where you got line item veto capabilities. You have to trust your staff at some point to put together a budget of their true needs. So we're not really micromanaging them. If it looks like unusual, we do have the right to get a final report. But I think at some point the council needs to give them the credit of knowing what their needs are and just at face value, accepting those, because like you said, Lewis doesn't just make up a budget without nobody looking at him and asking why. Lance is going to ask him why, Webb's going to ask him why, and I know she's going to ask him why.
Yeah, I hear what you're saying, but at the same time, we are also massively doing a disservice to our citizens as a whole if we don't make sure we look into a little bit more detail, not just take things at face value when we're talking about our budget. And this is also the workshop where we're doing these things. So I do respect the knowledge and education of all of our staff members, but at the same time, we represent thousands of others out there that they want to make sure that we are asking those questions to understand, they would like these things, but, I respect the holiday example that you gave. I'd love to have the holiday lights, but I think we owe it to other people to ask, just to make sure and do what we're supposed to be representing up here. So thank you.
Yeah, and for the most part, again, the operating budget is pretty cut and dry. It's utilities, it's ink for the printers, it's really the basic stuff, and the things that I believe the council members really need to concentrate on the capital projects, and those are the big dollars. These are, this is office supplies and postage. You guys need to focus, I think, your attention on the things that can have a real big impact on our city.
I do want to admit, though, that the holiday lights last year, I think, Ms. Prevalent, we had lots of people asking us to please help our city look a little more festive. They don't want to drive through Fort Walton and come here. So we'll speak on behalf of whoever's pushing that. We do know the city would like to see that changed.
Yeah, actually, that was one piece that Lance added in. He's like, wait, Lisa, we need to add more for holiday lights. I think that they would, they're considering, normally the big things would be like a capital project where we go out and we purchase a $30,000 Santa or Christmas box or something, This year, I just put in a little more operating money for a rent of that type of thing. Other than that, this budget is really, our staff are, they're very careful. It's pretty slim. And
Thank you for saying what I tried to say.
Well, with that, I'll hand it back over to.
I'm glad we have the workshop that we can do these things here. This is a fantastic opportunity, so thank you.
No, I agree. It's supposed to be a discussion, right? It's not supposed to be us just telling you, this is what we're going to do. We need your input. With that, I'm going to hand it back over to Lance to wrap up and maybe move on to get ready for our special meeting.
Thank you, Crystal. I don't have anything to add unless there's any questions or direction from the council. I appreciate you letting us present these items so that we can try to get you the best budget that we possibly can.
Does any council members have any parting comments or anything to say? If not, I'm going to go ahead and adjourn the meeting.
Mayor?
Is that okay?
Mayor, public comments.
Oh, we got public comment. That's correct. I forgot. I apologize. And it says right here, public comment before adjournment. I tried to skip that part. So I'll open it up for public comment. Anybody in the room who would like to weigh in on the discussion that's been taking part or would like to add anything that they would like to see us discuss at our next workshop or our next meeting? Seeing none? Anybody online?
No one.
Nope. How about you, Ray? Any text messages? None? I will adjourn the meeting at this time. We'll take a 5-minute break before we start our special meeting here next. I like all you folks a lot, but I want to go ahead and get this thing started so we can go home. So, now, I'm going to call a special meeting of the Destin City Council, June 14, 2021, to order. We don't have a pastor here tonight, and so we're going to open this meeting with the Pledge of Allegiance. Ms. Abear, would you like to lead us in pledge? And the reason this meeting was called to order is all under new business. Item A, the potential expansion of the Okaloosa County Tourist Development Taxing District. Now, I believe in the audience, we have Commissioner Mel Ponder, who represents our district, District 5. And is Craig still here? He bailed, okay. The county director was here, but I think our budget meeting got him. So anyways, so what I'd like to do is we can open it, Lance, with a word from the sheriff and then go from there. Is that what we, or do you want to start it?
I think, Mr. Destin, did you want to make an opening statement on this?
Sure. We'll start with you, sir.
Yep. The mayor was out fishing, and that's always a dangerous thing to leave me by myself. So we learned that the county had on their agenda for Tuesday potential expansion of the tourist development district. And I know that that is a very important issue to Destin, and I knew it was to the mayor, and I felt certain he would have done the same thing. So we are here to discuss that potential expansion. I believe that Commissioner Ponder and I have had several discussions, and he is amenable to us having our attorneys work with the county attorneys to try to work forward to address any issues that we may have on the equitable distribution of the funds. I think there are $41 million in reserves at the moment that were raised within the existing district at the moment, that exists at the moment. And so, as one of the larger contributors to that fund, Destin has a real dog in that fight. So, I would be happy to make a motion directing our city attorneys, both of them, to work with the county attorneys to work on safeguards that we can put into this process, so that we have an equitable distribution of the funds. And if Crestview and Niceville, who are the potential people to enter, vote in that manner, then they will be satisfied with how it goes forward for them too. But I think that we can work it out. There are several methods. One I would suggest is we can put some details into the ballot language. And there are a number of other questions that could be answered in that manner. And the question of who votes and how they vote are also things I'm sure that will come up. So I will make that motion if we can get a second.
I'll make a second on that.
And then we can have some discussion, Mayor.
So we have a motion, and to be clear, Ray, would you like to read that motion back?
To direct the city attorney and land use attorney to work with the county attorney with the methods for equitable distribution of funds.
And I think that if we have any public folks who want to discuss,
Sure.
now's the time.
Okay, and so that's the motion, and we have a second. So before we start that process of discussion, would you like to hear from the public
If
first?
there's anyone here that would like to say anything, yes.
Okay,
Commissioner Ponder's here.
yes, I know that. But I just want to be accurate under Robert's rules. We have a motion, we have a second, so we probably should vote on that. Or I guess we can
Mayor,
include this
you
under
can
discussion.
open it up to public comment. at this
Okay,
time. That
yeah, I
would not
just
be
don't want to
improper.
go outside the process.
It would not be improper to open up to
Okay,
public
well
comment at
then,
this time.
Seeing how the most important public person here to speak is Commissioner Ponder, you have the floor. Press the button and for the public record.
Thank you, Mayor, Council. It's an honor to be with you as always. Thank you for your time. I don't know if I was the one where everybody backed up and I was just the last one still standing there or not, but as Mayor Pro Tem Destin said, he and I met already. We talked into last week, met Saturday, and committed to each other to work with staff, have our attorneys work together, have staffs work together, work towards a solution that, as he said, is more equitable than just throwing something up against the wall. There's a long history of Destin having a strong presence and reputation in terms of tourism and bed tax impact. And we have to be mindful of not only, what we talked about, we got to define that. And that's where I think the attorneys can come in and be very helpful to help us realize what does that look like, how do you define what that looks like. And so tomorrow, I think our goal with this vote would be to go back to the commission and say, hey, let's not necessarily, because we can't turn it within 12 hours, but turn it and say, hey, can we push this vote off for 30 days, allow our staffs and attorneys to work together so that then we can come back and either determine, do we keep the election in October, do we push it to November, what does the ballot language look like, as Councilman Destin said. But the continued, we need a healthy, strong relationship working with each other. We need to have wisdom in how we put that forth. And I think that there's a lot that Destin has to stand on. The $41 million you're talking about, those funds have to be spent back in the district they are collected from. That's a rumor I've heard out there as well. They can't take those funds and sweep them somewhere else. So I think the first step is to at least have a little bit of peace, knowing that the funds that are sitting there can only come back to the district they were raised from. What we need to be looking at is should it go to referendum in any form or fashion, what does it look like from that point going forward? So yes, sir, Mayor.
Yeah, I have a question because tomorrow at your commission meeting, they're going to, on the agenda is to vote on a resolution, not the actual ordinance itself.
Right.
That creates time for if this motion's approved, which I'm sure it will be, gives the attorneys and the two staffs time to start working on what the ordinance will look like, and that's where we can have the most impact.
That's where the rubber meets the road, but it's still my intention, just so you know, it's still my intention to ask the fellow commissioners to delay 30 days or till, I guess, the second meeting in July before we pick it up. That would allow any kind of, rumor, concern, fear, or whatever to come to light. We can deal with it and then continue to work together to work towards a solution. Worst case, or what I guess is worst case, if it does pass tomorrow and they say, hey, Mel, thanks, the ordinance is the key piece of the puzzle. We have to, that's where everybody be brought into play. And later, after that's even done, it can still be unplugged. It still can be not done in the fall if there's not some sort of agreement that everyone comes together on. But ideally, I'd love to see a 30-day push, let everybody talk, let the fear come to the surface, look at the equitable distribution that we're talking about, and so that we can at least go forth and have at least the community Destin can feel like we're honored. Is kind of the word that I kind of use with I want to say Commissioner Councilman Destin again, to feel like we're honored, as well as the rest of the county feel like they're honored. But I think at the same time, we can work towards that and hopefully find something that y'all are pleased with.
In my mind, I'm thinking that the referendum language, seeing how it'll be voted on, is really, really important as far as us being protected.
It's 75 words or less, so yeah, we got to, and that's where the attorneys has, and it's been said, needs to kind of put their
Yeah, because
on.
that gives us a more defensible position if it's voted, once it's voted by the electorate, more so than any language in an ordinance. Don't you feel like, Mr. Destin, you have experience with all this on the
Absolutely,
board.
and that's was my thoughts. And the 30-day pause that Commissioner Ponder is going to ask for and that we're also going to request gives us time to get that ballot language right and to do the research on, if there's any law that has already been settled on the issue. We need the extra 30 days and then go forward. So we would respectfully request, and we can make that part of the motion if necessary, that the county give us that pause so that we can work with them.
I think it'd be a good idea. I also would, because I do have to go fishing tomorrow, would like that once the vote's taken place, that I think it'd be a great idea if you, as Mayor Pro Tem, would attend the meeting tomorrow to back up Commissioner ponder in our request as
Love to
well,
have
and
you
make
there.
public comment to that appointee if it's
I would
okay.
certainly be there, and I would suggest that any members that can be there. And I forgot and left out of the motion, but I think we should contact the other cities within the existing district. You know, Mary Esther, I think Fort Walton, Cinco maybe. Is Cinco in it?
Cinco's already.
Yeah, I mean,
Oh, they-
the ones that
yeah.
are in the existing district now.
The Cinco
Yeah,
slip in?
and
Yeah, that's
Oakwood Island.
Fort Walton, Marison, yeah,
We
no
should
problem.
have our attorneys contact them so we can make sure that we are not pursuing a course that they don't agree with them. I think they probably would.
Yeah, I don't think probably we could direct our city attorney to do that without adding that to the motion. I think your motion's pretty concise on where we want to go. Any questions for Commissioner Ponder? Go ahead, Dr. Ramswell.
So I guess I had a couple of concerns, and one of them is that as far back as 2019, when this idea was kind of bounced around and Mr. Stewart came and spoke here, and you may have been here as well, I can't recall, but there had been an assurance that the county attorneys would work with our city attorneys on the ballot language, and we'd be working together, and yet this was a complete surprise to us. And I went back and I looked at the TDC minutes, and y'all did not exactly discuss it, but you talked about a potential expansion and just in more general terms. So I guess I'm just wondering how the council and our attorneys managed to get left out, and you probably don't know the answer to that, so I guess it's more of just a rhetorical question, but it clearly is important for our attorneys to have a word and continue that cooperative effort and discussion, as you've mentioned and we're discussing tonight. Something else I noted that was of concern to me is in the FAQ that was part of the agenda packet, it talks about the seats and that Destin is going to lose its automatic seat. And I don't understand how that is possible because we are one of the 2 seats that are given to an elected official, one of them being given to the most populous. That would not be us at this time, it would be Fort Walton, so we would have that other seat. So how can they definitively say we're automatically losing our automatic seat? Do you?
Sure, I'll try to take a stab at both of them. I myself thought and I've talked to county staff about this, I thought we all knew it was coming, even your attorneys, our attorneys, we all knew it was coming. The dialogue about the agenda meeting for tomorrow was not informed to you. I found out about it midstream myself, and it affects my district. So I've talked to several people involved in that and felt like, although we may have known it was coming, myself included, the optics of it were probably not as healthy. But I think that's something I'm not looking to browbeat them. I'm saying we'll learn for next time. We just need to be a little more communicative with that, because I think Destin and the county have worked pretty well recently. And I think Captain Wine started that, and I'm hoping that I can continue that. I know it's my intent to make sure our relationship only builds and not goes backwards. And I think so anyway, from that regard, I'll apologize to you that it wasn't handled properly, but I will say that it will be, I'll work on making sure that's done better in the future. The seats on the commission, as I'm sure Dr. Rams will know, it goes to the 2 largest municipalities or the guaranteed seats. So Destin, if it were to expand as one, if all things remain the same and all expanded, it would go to Crestview and Fort Walton. Why it's worded that way is, I know a lot of the arguments, myself included, was a non-starter was Destin not having a guaranteed seat at the table. And so that was part of what the mayor talked about. The ordinance process would be worded to say Destin would have a permanent seat on the Tourism Development Council. So that's why it was worded that way, as part of the Q&A, that they would have lost their guaranteed seat. They have it now because it's just the way it is, how we're worked in, because we're one of the top 2. But if it expands, we become number 4, but we'd still have a guaranteed seat.
Sure, and I appreciate what you're saying, but when you really read the actual statute, and I went back and read it, and I also read the Okaloosa County TDC's thing, and it's actually verbatim the same as the Florida statute, and it says 2 seats, at least one being to the most populous. So that's why I wondered why we were being clumped into that when it doesn't specify that it's the 2 most populous.
I'm not an attorney. I could refer to Ms. Copper.
Yeah.
I don't know. I was always told it was the top two most populated, and then, anyway, so
No, no,
I'll let an
and
attorney get that one, but
Sure,
I'm
and-
sure you're 100% right. I'm not going to deny that, but I just want to make sure Destin had a guaranteed spot.
no, I
I'll just-
appreciate that, and that's one of our big concern. Go ahead, Kyle.
Sure, thanks, Preble and Mel. I just want to jump in real quick. I believe that Ms. Ramswell's interpretation of the statute is probably correct. It could be, though, that your current ordinance reserves a seat to the two most populous, and that might be why Destin has that protective seat. So I'm sure that we can work this out with Lynn going forward and maintain Destin with that seat. So.
Well, Destin, I mean, assuming everything goes forward, Destin will have a guaranteed seat.
I appreciate that.
I mean, I can't speak for the other four, but I think that was something that people were.
Yeah, and I love the direction you're going, and I want to fully agree. I mean, I sat up here 5 years ago, I think it was, and I said, let's secede from the county. I was so upset at our relationship. And we have come just great strides and lengths, and I do appreciate that, and I do want to continue the improvement. But as you mentioned, it was quite startling to see that as an agenda item, knowing that we had been promised to be a cooperative effort in moving forward. So I really look forward to seeing that happen.
Well, I apologize to you again on behalf of the county. It was not.
No need, it
But it's
wasn't
something
you.
that I think, obviously, I'm hoping that the optics and the communication are stronger next time, but I'll take the blame, but I didn't know myself, but at least we'll all hopefully know more going forward.
I appreciate it. And I know there's going to be a lot of things that we want to discuss as a council, perhaps with our attorneys in terms of
Sure.
what we'd like to see in the language. And I know it's very difficult to fathom that as one of the districts that's already part of it, or being part of this district, that we can't have our voters vote. It's only those voting to get into the district. So it seems kind of like, we're getting shut out, but I know that's just the optics and that's not the reality. It's just the way everything's written. But, we, as you mentioned, we just need to ensure that we do have that fair shake and as being the primary bed tax bringer in, if you will, for lack of a better term. But thank you so much.
Yeah, everyone has their seat, and I think if we can do it honorably and feel like Destin is honored the way that it should be, and as well as the other opportunities that the other communities bring to the table, but preserve what I believe we will hopefully press towards, and I think that maybe we can find a resolution that we can all be proud of. And again, I'm only one of five, but at least you'll have my commitment to.
I've got, Commissioner Ponder, I got a couple more folks that want to talk to you. So, Ms. Abear, you're next, and then Mr. Morgan.
Hi, sir. I'm being on the TDC with you in the last meeting, just,
Oh, yeah,
a couple weeks ago. I mean, it was kind of amazing that.
This is a publicly noticed meeting, right?
Yes,
So
it
okay,
is.
good. Yeah.
And
Good.
at
Make
that
sure.
meeting, that this discussion never came up. And I, like Ms. Preble, read through the statute and was kind of shell-shocked at, where we were sitting and to have this meeting going on tomorrow and really no notice. So I commend you for stepping up and giving us what we need to know and helping us help our lawyers and get us to the table, get us our guaranteed seat, and make sure, like my fellow council members have said, we are a big chunk of the breadwinners to bring the money to this area of the panhandle in particularly. And so I'm very glad that we have you and your team working with us, helping us to make this come to fruition, because I know that our citizens are very excited to have the business back booming like it is, but it'd be also nice to get back the bed tax that we are certainly a big piece of drawing to the area. So thank you, and thanks for being here tonight to clarify it.
I'm sorry I was late, but thankfully I was able to get here before it started. So,
Yeah, he's doing other business,
that's okay. Good job.
unlike me.
Good question, too.
Mr. Morgan.
Thank you, Mayor. I just sent Commissioner Ponder an email about an hour ago, so he's
Got it.
probably
I'll
going to
sit
hear
here.
a lot of my message twice.
That's okay.
But I will say, back in 2019, when Okaloosa County came with Commissioner Wines and I guess Greg Stewart, somebody else, but they did make explicit assurances that the money would be equally distributed based on the original taxing district to the former, because in Destin, we do pay probably 30-40% of the ad valorem taxes for the county. And, our concern, we generate 70% of the revenue now for the TDC, and the overwhelming concern that I would have would be that money could be distributed to areas in the county that it's not generated. And I met with Jennifer Adams, who's, I think, done a wonderful job. And I would echo what Preble has said about our relationship with Okaloosa County. I'm proud of what we've created. We've got really good momentum. And the relationship with Okaloosa County has been the best since I've been associated with the city. And I would like to see that continue. And I think, Jennifer Adams had mentioned that they were gonna memorialize it in ordinance form, the distribution of the money and Destin seat. And my concern with the ordinance is we change ordinances all the time up here. And it's basically at the will of the elected commission, and why the commission of 5 currently in Okaloosa County would support an equitable distribution. That could change. And so it's kind of one of those trust but verify situations that I would like to see it in the ballot language, concrete assurances that our money can't be reappropriated to other ends of the county. And without that, I think you would have a hard time getting the support of Destin with the county, and I would hate to see that division.
Sure. Oh, I don't want to see the division either. A couple of things, I'll just answer some of the questions you brought. The last time, and it's close, you said 70. I think the last time it was measurable was 66%, but you're pretty close to that. Part of what and I think we need to look at it, and I talked to Mayor Pro Tem Destin about this briefly, maybe just actually, I don't know how far we got too deep on this at all, but the collection process, we don't have we don't collect locally. We used to, and then they stopped that. The tax collector and the clerk have been approached. Both have declined it for right now, but the county can still look at it. Walton and Bay have that, which is why they can collect and be targeted. At the moment, we don't have that. Numbers, I think they've tossed around $500,000 or $600,000 a year. Now, we've paid it before. It was budgeted before and went to the tax collector to pay for overhead to collect it. So it's something we could absolutely look at again if we want to be pinpoint accurate on not just Destin, but lodging type in Destin. We can get very specific with that. And then that's something that I'm assuming the Mayor Pro Tem and our teams will talk about as we go forward in the next 30 days as one additional option. So, but we don't have that ability as we sit today to be that specific. But that goes back to what you concluded with, is the language because we can't bind future commission, whatever, they can vote down the road. So which goes back to what we put forth. I'm hoping will be not only honorable here at home in Destin, but something that the community can wrap their hands around, because I don't want fragmentation where we get into a situation where any kind of people like, well, hey, listen, I'd rather have a family feel. We come to the dinner table and honor each other in the process. But absolutely we can look at, I don't know what Mr. Destin's position is on that. Our staffs and attorneys can look at that, and maybe that should be at least something we consider to get that accuracy because I think Walton Bay do it, Santa Rosa, Escambia, and they don't do it. But it's something we could look at.
I think you kind of got the catch-22. You have to get the new voters to support the ballot initiative. And, and we're requesting that we have certain protections in the ballot language. And I think you're going to walk a fine line there with what's acceptable to the new voters and, what's acceptable to Destin, who our voters aren't going to be voting on it, from what I've gathered. But, I think I think the county, I would personally have strong opposition, and I know a lot of members in the business community that generally I don't agree with on city council, and we've all kind of found ourselves in agreement. And so like anytime you have me and the short-term rental guys, agreeing absolutely on something, we're kind of onto an issue that I think we think's worth fighting. So,
Excellent.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Just one comment, and we do need to see if we can't move to the system that they have in Bay and Walton. And where's it, Escambia?
Escambia doesn't have it. Santa Rosa,
Okay.
I don't think.
Santa Rosa, because without that kind of accounting, we can't make sure that the new entries into this will get the money that they have coming either. So, what we have to do to facilitate that, I think, is necessary to make this fair and equitable to them also, because this is not about keeping somebody out. We want them, if they want to be part of it, to come in. We just have to make sure it's fair to everybody involved.
Yeah, and, you know, my feeling, and of course, Commissioner Ponder and I spoke about this issue after I got back in phone range. One of the things that by having this extra district, there can be some benefits to our community from it because due to Florida statute that was passed a few years back, our public safety, especially our beach stuff, is held to the 10% of our budget that comes in from TDC tourist tax dollars. An additional tax revenue source will actually benefit the south end of the county because now we can, our 10% goes up. So there's going to be some possible net benefits out of it too. I sure do like knowing what everybody contributes to have a better picture of what's going on. Probably most of the tax revenue that's coming into Crestview is through their hotels and TDY folks in the military and stuff like that. So, you know, they do have infrastructure needs now that tax money can be used for infrastructure. I think that's what the motivation was their bypass, and the TD and the Triumph funding kind of wanted them to put more skin in the game. So I get all that. But, you know, we got to walk a fine line because there's a lot more than just tourist tax dollars that the county and us have to work together on, especially long after all of us are off this council. Infrastructure needs, you know, stormwater runoff and support for grants and stuff to do. I mean, they gave us $12 million of you know, for our beach initiative. So we'll be far better off to be able to work this out than to throw rocks and take a defensive position. So I know you're a great leader. I've watched you already, and I have full confidence that not only can we work through this, but I would be surprised that he's not chairman of the county commissioners in his due time. So I think between you and Mr. Destin tomorrow that you'll get the message clear and concise.
I think we're all better if we can work together, Mayor.
I do too.
And I think as Mr. Destin and I have already met and committed each other to work together, I'm hoping the results of tomorrow are optimistic and positive, and that we agree to table this for, and again, I'm one of five, but my desire is to hopefully convince the commissioners, let's wait 30 more days. Let's let our teams work together, come up with some language that this team can be proud of and that the county can be proud of, and we come out and have a win all around.
I mean, we don't want to have our backs put up against the wall on this.
But we also got to honor what Destin brings to the table.
And we don't want to put the commissioners' backs up against the wall. So I think we'll be a lot better off with you and Kyle and the message we send here today, that it's one of cooperation and fairness. And like you said, the word honor. We just want Destin to be honored. At the same time, we want to honor the.
Dr. Ramsell brought up several things. Our legal minds need to be involved because,
yes.
hey, listen,
Right language. So anyways.
Mayor, I did have one more question for Commissioner Ponder, if you wouldn't mind. And I think you brought the number up that it would cost about 400 or 500,000. Is that what you said to do
I've
this
heard
special
500 to 600,000.
So
No, not the special election, that'd be two if we designate.
For the
special election
revenue
would be
distribution.
100,000 or 145 if it's in person or a mail out. But to add whatever it is, 500 or 600,000 to cover the cost to self-collect here locally.
distribute. So then I guess my question is, I read in one of the releases from the county that they're looking at this expansion generating about $2.2 million additional in bed tax.
I think it's a little more than that. I think
Well,
it's like
and that was in November 2020, so if the
Okay.
numbers, estimations have changed,
Yeah, I think
maybe.
it's-
But my thought being, if we're already bringing in 18 to 20 million bucks, so, and if we're looking at a special distribution that's gonna pull 500,000 out of 2.2, 1.5, I mean, I don't know, if you're crunching the numbers, is it worth that effort to bring in maybe 1.5 million? And maybe it is, I don't know what your
That's
colleagues
assuming we
are
get down that path, you
looking
mean?
at, but, yeah, I'm just looking at the numbers, but, yeah, I of course share the concerns of where it's gonna be spent and where it's
Sure.
gonna be allocated, and, you know, we have infrastructure needs down here that haven't been addressed, but if we're looking at doing them up in Crestview, that seems counterintuitive, but
Well, and you bring up a great point, Dr. Ramswell. When it comes to capital, it's easy you can easily see where that money's going. When it comes to branding, and all 5 pennies have a statute limitation as how they can be spent. So when you look at the marketing pennies, our brand's Destin, Fort Walton Beach. Destin's in the brand. Our airport, Destin, one of the fastest growing airports in the nation, is already Destin, Fort Walton Beach. And so, like when Mr. Destin and I were talking Saturday, it's like, if we want, say it's 66% or whatever it is, how do you define it? But capital is easily definable. And then back to your other point, it's just a matter of, I think it was a little north of 3 to 4 million or whatever it could be, the projected revenue, is do we want to be like Bay and Walton if we get to a point of wanting to know? Because I think I've seen some stuff where you can be even more targeted in your marketing dollars if you know specifically the lodging types, the locations, and what they're spending their funds on, et cetera, that some of the stuff Ms. Adams is working on. So do we want that rifle approach where we can actually be targeted not only how it's coming in and distributing, but also how we market for who's coming to our market? So it's features and benefits, I know, but you bring up a great point. Is it a good stewardship to spend 500 or 600 of 3, which is 20%, or can the yield be higher longer term, and we work like Walton and Bay and other counties around the state who self-collect? So, I'm hoping the results of that will come out through our counties and city working together and seeing it as one option what the ROI is and something like that.
Let me ask you a question, Mel. The state collects it and don't charge any fee. Are you sure about that? That must be a first.
I don't know. That's a good question, Mr. Destin. I don't know.
Yeah, we need to look at that because I can't believe they're going to be in charge of collecting and not keeping anything.
Something. Yeah,
And
time.
I've never seen that happen. So that's another question.
Hell,
So maybe,
no, come on now, they're going to take.
maybe the expense is not as much as we think it is.
Well, and it's
That's a good point. Good
it's not 600,000 from the 3 million they generated. It's 600,000
From
a
the
year
whole-
for
from the
everybody,
whole,
for the
which is
money
over
we
20.
generate too. And
Well-
apparently somewhere along the line, the county
point, Mayor.
commissioner said it ain't worth it to
Well-
spend $600,000 a year for that information.
I think they
But this
had
is-
to after the audit.
Yeah, something with, and so. And
Oh, is that right?
We'll
So,
go back.
so anyways, I don't care on that particular
That's
issue
a great point,
either
Mayor.
way.
It's for the full thing, not just the
Sure,
expanded part.
sure. I want to just make sure that you're not taking their 3 million and all 600,000 is coming out of their deal. That's not how it works.
Yeah.
It's just, if that's the way they want to count bed tax monies, it costs $600,000 a year or it's 500,000. And apparently the previous commissions decided that wasn't worth the cost.
It comes up. I've brought it up before, and then it kind of quiets down, but on something like this,
Yeah,
it
maybe
should be
it
part of
might
the
be-
discussion at least, and we can check the
Yeah.
ROI and see if it's going to make sense.
I will say that TDC's got 42 million in reserves, and they generate a heck of a lot of money, and a lot of it's for stuff like marketing, and I know the pennies are only allocated, but it's, to me, to pay that amount of money is not a bad insurance policy for the city of Destin and the existing tax district to make sure that
Knowledge is
that money
power.
stays equitable.
So having that knowledge can help the county commissioners make better decisions on how to divide the monies. So
Who would
I-
decide that? Who would decide whether we would spend that money to have that done?
I would assume we would. Commissioner would, yeah.
That's what we can't forget. It is their money, by the
Well,
way.
it's protected, those pennies are protected. Yeah,
Yeah.
they can't go in the general fund or anything like that, but
That's
yeah.
right.
Yeah,
So
there's some oversight.
we don't collect any bed tax here in Destin, so
There's a lot of
we have to keep that in
VRBO.
mind.
What's that?
We have to keep that in mind.
Yeah, if we go targeted, I think you'd probably see a little more revenue because there's a lot more VRBOs that may not be reporting, and that all of a sudden now there's a lot more contributors that would be, my assumption, I guess, and they'd be accountable. And granted, I believe that's what I understand. I could be wrong on that, but so that
Another good
that top
argument.
line could go up a little bit more.
Another good argument for direct collection. Anyways, any other comments? Any,
Sure, of course. Thank y'all. Anything else y'all, think all of y'all got my cell, so please call or text me. Sure. No, I'm good. Thanks.
Councilmember Destin, just to answer your question real quick, pursuant to subsection 10 of that statute, the DOR does charge for its cost of administrative services. I do not know the amount that they charge. It's just the cost of administrative services pursuant to the statute. We can look into that. I don't know the amount.
Yeah, it'd be interesting to know what that figure is. A small percentage of a lot of money still is a lot of money.
Mr. Bagby, go ahead, sir. You know the routine.
I do. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Jim Bagby, 4709, and 125-0104 is probably the only statute that I know very well. So I would ask you to ask your attorneys to ask a few specific questions when they are talking with the county attorneys. Number one, keep it here. Talking about what's in the kitty right now, that's not in the statute. I don't believe that's in the statute. So that would have to be codified in some manner, and they need to make sure that that is codified because it is the county's money, and the county can really spend it for the benefit of the taxing district. And if the taxing district is the whole county, they can spend it for the benefit of the whole county. And so that's one concern. Number two, check on the voting requirement. I think there may be an attorney general opinion. And this is why Walton, when they added the taxing district at the north end of the county, didn't expand the south end because they were afraid everybody in the south end would vote against the expansion because they were afraid that the money was going to go up to Defuniak Springs and not benefit that taxing district. So I would just make sure that the voting, when you expand the taxing district, is not the entire taxing district, because the way the statute reads currently is it says if you establish the taxing district or a sub-county taxing district, everybody gets to vote in it. So if you're establishing a new taxing district, the old one kind of goes away, which leads me to the next question. When you establish a new taxing district, the statute limits it to just the first 2 pennies. You have to do the first 2 pennies for 2 or 3 years, and then you can increase it. And that's maybe another factor why Walton, because they already had the 5 cents at the south end. The north end right now only has 2 cents. The protected seat, I would ask the attorneys to talk to the Bay County attorneys because Panama City Beach had the exact same problem. They generate all the bed tax revenue. Panama City and Mexico Beach, the other 2 taxing districts in Bay County, generate money, but nowhere near what Panama City Beach does. But Panama City is larger, and you're correct, Dr. Ramswell, is that there's 2 municipal seats that are guaranteed. One goes to the most populous, and so they codified that there would always be a seat in there for Panama City Beach or for the largest taxing district municipality. So make sure that we have, and again, we're not inventing anything new. There's a bunch of different models, but we just need to make sure that we do it. On the infrastructure, if you understand how the bed tax works, they're pennies, and there's the base 2 pennies, and then you can do a penny for beach nourishment, and then you can do a penny for, there's about 3 other options, convention center or sports field, some other options. If the money is not being collected under, and I want to say it's N, section N, then you can't do the, oh, well, we're going to give the sheriff 10% or we can spend it on infrastructure, stormwater, or whatever. So you have to make sure that there's an alignment with how you're collecting that money as to how you can expend it. Because y'all have probably seen in the paper, that's where Walton got in this big argument of the requirement to spend 40% on marketing. There is no requirement to spend 40% on marketing unless you are collecting the penny in that, which they are not. The 3%, if it comes, the statute authorizes the county to retain up to 3% to administer the fund, to collect it, like our county used to. Most of the counties, I think Walton, Bay, and others, the clerk or whoever's collecting the money charges 2%. I think the problem we got into, as Commissioner Ponder was explaining to me today, was It wasn't that they weren't collecting it before, it's they couldn't tell you where they were spending it. And so there was a little accountability problem there in our county government. But I would just make sure that the attorneys look out. I trust the county. I trust Commissioner Ponder as much as anybody. And the other four that are on there now, I trust them. But who knows who's going to be on there 4 years from now or 10 years from now? And if we don't get it either in the ballot language or we don't get it right in maybe that ordinance, they require supermajority or something. I don't know how to do that. That's the attorney's jobs. But I know there's some things that we need to make sure that we do to protect our interests, okay, and the citizens of this town's interest. Thank you.
Thanks, sir. Appreciate your comments, Jim. Anyone else? Parker, come on up. You know the routine.
Mayor, Council, Parker Destin, 730 Kelly Street. Everything Jim Bagby just said is 110% right. He stole my thunder, so I'm just going to tell you what he's telling you are the deep concerns that all of us have to be taking into consideration. The attorneys need to get stitched up. Otherwise, things can get very sideways very quickly. Especially, we know that we don't know who's going to be on city council in the future. We don't know who's going to be on county commission in the future. And frankly, we know that there's inevitably going to be times where the city and the county don't see eye to eye. And so you need the deal that gets struck to always be the ironclad deal that will be the equitable distribution, the seat forever, because when money gets involved and people from certain areas think that they should get something and others are fighting, there's opportunities for vindictive politics, and you don't want to have any of the nastiness that can inevitably come up basically erode the interests long-term of the citizens of Destin, this community. And Jim's absolutely right on all those different reasons. Same thing with, and he really hit the nail on the head when he was talking about the reserves. It's not enshrined in statute that they have to spend the money where it was generated once they expand. I believe them when they say that they'll follow that, but they're not required to, as far as I can tell. It seems like that's just one lawyer's legal interpretation, which means they could change their mind. So it's nice. I appreciate the sentiment. I believe them, but we need to have assurances, and that goes for the money that's already been generated, but frankly, the money that goes in perpetuity. I agree with the sentiment of Commissioner Ponder and Councilmember Destin. Let's give peace a chance, because this district has existed since around 1989. There's a reason that the district isn't already countywide, because the stumbling blocks that we're discussing right now were the stumbling blocks in 1989, and the only solution that they could come up with was to not create a countywide district to get around the fact that these are big problems. How do you really, really slice up the pie? How do you make sure that everybody's treated fairly? And that is our challenge. That is the challenge that's going to be tasked to the attorneys over the next 30 days, and I think we should give them the opportunity to hash it out. I appreciate the time to speak to you, and I'll be there in the morning. I hope some other folks can be there too.
Thank you, Mr. Destin. Anyone else? Seeing none, I'll close the public comment period. And we have a motion and a second on the floor. And if there's no further discussion, we'll go ahead and take it to a vote.
Can you repeat the motion, Ray?
Motion is to direct the city attorney and land use attorney to work with the county attorney on methods for equitable distribution of funds. And then Councilmember Destin added to request the county delays the vote for the special election for 30 days to afford the attorneys time to press forward with that cooperative efforts. And the third portion, I'm not sure if you wanted it part of the motion, is to also direct the city attorneys to contact other cities within the existing district.
No. Okay. So that's not part of the motion, that last comment. So if there's no further ado, we'll go ahead and take a vote. Ray, Mr. Braden, and Mr. King are here, so I don't know if you have to put them absent or not.
Can I cancel this vote?
I think we're going to have to cancel the vote and go back, or we can just do the...
The vote is unanimous, 5-0, so moved. All right. There was one more item on here, and then hopefully we can go home. The GLC change order approval.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Since we had this meeting tonight, I did request that I could walk this on, get the council to ratify the change order number 6 with GLC, who is our primary contractor at Captain Royal Melvin Heritage Park. And we needed a change order in order to secure Destin water users to complete a 12-inch water main installation on that property. And so I'm asking for your ratification. I did sign it on Friday. They had a window of opportunity where they could keep working, and I did not want to stop the progress of the park, so I did sign off on it Friday.
Okay, I'll entertain a motion at this time. All right, we have a
Second.
motion to approve. We have a second. Is there any discussion? Seeing none? Keep going. Ayes have it, unanimous, so moved. Thank you, Commissioner Ponder, for attending tonight's meeting. Public comments from Mr. Bagby and Mr. Destin, and we are done tonight. Meeting adjourned.